Um, as I've learned has become etiquette with recordings, you can have your camera on or not, it's up to you. And but just know that if you do have your camera on, you could be in the recording. So I've learned to be saying that sort of thing. I can see Alan McKelvey is here from Masseycorp, and I'd like to commend Alan. This is not about fundraising from the UK, but it's a beautiful example of what underpinned my starting this. Alan does not have a background in fundraising. He does not have a background in the charity sector as it's known in the UK. But he got very involved with an organization in South Africa, Masseycorp, and Alan he saw that other organizations were doing quite well in getting in bequests, legacies. People were leaving money in their will. And as he's passionately committed to the organization that he volunteers for, he wanted to find out about it. And Alan just put it out there. I was just one of the people to whom he put it out. Tell me about it. He asked so many people about this thing called bequests. And as soon as Alan had mastered this, he implemented it with the team at Masseycorp. And then the next thing he did is he started sharing his learnings. That I just thought was admirable, Alan, and thank you for that. And that's what I'm trying to emulate here. Because I have no doubt in some of your learnings, you bumped your head. And in other cases, you went, oh, wow, isn't this incredible? I've had Alan talk things I've organized in the UK, as well as our conferences and that sort of thing. And the level and extent to which Alan was sharing, well, this is what we did wrong, but this is what we came up with on our own. So you get a gold star for that, Alan, and it's a model of what I'd like to see our monthly chats become. Do you want to add anything to that, Alan? Because the topic isn't bequests, but I just loved what you did. I loved how you crowdsourced your knowledge and then shared it with absolutely anybody who cared to ask.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, and thank you for organizing this. It's a wonderful turnout. I reckon you've 50 or maybe 60 listening, or what. I know they're not watching because of the tricky situation with Wi-Fi in some parts of South Africa. Yeah, legacy giving is a hugely important aspect to fundraising in the UK. The big charities, the lifeboats, the cancer research, the guide dogs raise millions each year from legacies. And it's certainly something which, if you're not doing, you should consider. I'm happy to share how we approached it. We sent a questionnaire out to all of our donors and asked them to respond. And we had nearly a 20% positive response. And out of that, we identified those who had already given and those who might give. So we do have donors. We have already received legacies, and we're hopeful to receive a lot more. Jill has my email address, and if I can help any of you with.
Thank you. You know what, I'm just thinking right here as you're talking, because each of these chats, these sessions, they're networking. I was just trying to take, how do we pretend we've got people in a room, and how do we kind of share? What I can do, and with your assistance, Alan, maybe we can make this a topic of one of these discussions. So as I said, it is not formal training. We're not putting up slides. And we'll build something around the topic of a bequest legacy, and that would be fantastic. So we will rope you in. But why I pointed you out is because I saw you on the call, and I just thought, wow, I so remember when you were, asking anybody in South Africa, in the UK, in America. I mean, there was no limit to your crowdsourcing the knowledge, and people gave so freely. And I thought, wonderful, well done you for trying that route. And then you just immediately started sharing with everyone else. So wonderful. Anyway, our topic is fundraising from the UK. So as I said, I'm not watching the chat. I would prefer you to put the icon or switch on your camera and raise your hand for that matter. If anybody, I know that a lot of people are more au fait with Teams than with Zoom. I happen to personally prefer Zoom. So if you can't quite work out how to have the hand icon, You can do one of two things. You can literally put your camera on and you can raise your hand. Or if you're really struggling on any of those levels, you could type a question into chat, but I'm not necessarily going to see it because I'm holding it together, making notes, and I'm admitting people. But you could always put in chat, please would somebody ask X? So I'm going to start throwing it open in two ways. And remember, this time I haven't done the background and asked 4 or 5 people to, start sharing. I purposely haven't done it because I want this to be organic. I really want people to feel that this is their own and not have this become, I nearly used the word degenerate, but that's a bad word. I'd like these groups to become just go-to places where everybody feels comfortable, whether they're new to the sector or they've been around. Eric Atmore, I can see you there. You've been in this nonprofit world longer than I have. You're one of my poster children, as it were, for doing this and for your dedication. So, I'd like people like you, Eric, to get a lot from this as well. And so we're not just aimed at beginner. There's our lovely Merle Brown. I mean, there's such a mix. We've got a wealth of knowledge in here. So whether you're beginning, whether you've been around a long time, please share. So let me throw it open. As I said, I have not rigged this on any level. I have not prompted anybody to open up. So is anybody want to start? This is what's that? I don't like cliches, but still, this is a safe space. Is there anybody who has a specific question? Be it, this has been a hassle in our attempts to fundraise in the UK, or I always wonder about it, or I hear these strange things. In other words, what do you want to know? Because this is not formal structured training. Who'd like to ask a question about UK fundraising? Because one thing I can tell you, it's like fundraising from the UK is different to fundraising from any other country in the world into South Africa. So who'd like
my hand is up.
See, I can see. Sorry, I'm just yeah. Okay, I'm perfect. I'm trying to read your name.
Kamani.
Okay, please go.
You're almost there.
Yes,
all right. Just
no,
a question.
Sorry, Kamari, I've got this tiny screen. That's my problem. I bought a very small laptop to make it easier to carry, but it's small. Yeah, please.
100%. Thank you so much, though, for this session. Really, I mean, I'm already finding it helpful. It's been a couple of minutes, but I'm already finding it helpful. Kamani from NK Make Your Mark, an organization based in Johannesburg. Just a question maybe for Ellen. Thank you for sharing what you've shared, but a question for you. In your, I'll call it informal research about legacies, have you found, or what have you found regarding what are donors more likely to leave a legacy, or what cause are they more likely to leave a legacy to? Would it be religious? Would it be in the health department or the health sector? But yeah, maybe if you can just share more in your informal research, what were they more likely to leave legacies, or what causes were they more likely to bequeath a legacy?
Ellen, I muted you. Sorry. I get so many complaints about our participants' background noise.
In the UK, the big legacy recipients are cancer research, UK Cancer and Cancer Research UK. And anyway, yeah, cancer research is a big one here. Lifeboats is an enormous one as well. Guide dogs, another enormous one. In terms of specific projects, I'm hesitating because I can't think of any specific project other than those wide-sweeping research activities of the cancer charities.
Shall I come in, Alan? Because I'm more aware of the South African situation. I would answer in two ways. People who are part of specific denominations, religions, will often put that as their first, if they're going to leave 3 legacies, that'll be as effectively as to their church or their place of worship. That's very important for South Africans, I have found. And then simply the organizations that they have an association with. It could be they work there. They could have been beneficiaries in some manner, in other words, alumni. They may have been donors. When I'm asked, help us set up a legacy program, my first question is, how many individual donors have you got? Oh, well, we actually don't really go that route. I go, well, fix that. Talk to me in a year and I'll guide you. So I hope that helps. I'm just trying to see, Mani, I can't see the full name of your organization. It's not showing up on my tiny screen.
So yeah, it's NK Make Your Mark. It's that full name.
Okay,
yes,
thank you, lovely. All right.
Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, Paul. Let me mute.
Esther's had a hand up a long time. Go for it, Esther.
Hi, Julian and Alan and everyone else. Thank you very much. I'm in Cape Town. And Jill, as you know, South Africa is a very diverse country and with different situations going on. I specifically focus on the first Indigenous peoples, and in that I have an NPO as well. You know, the state of our communities. It's a huge challenge getting support locally. What I'm wanting to know is, how would I go about seeking this support outside of South Africa, from the UK specifically, in terms of funding for the benefits of the First Nation communities? It's so important. You know what our communities are like, so I don't have to go into all of that. So yeah, please advise which organizations or which structures would be best for me to approach in getting their support, getting their buy-in, in wanting to fix the situations of the first Indigenous nations of South Africa, Southern Africa.
Thank you, Esther. You see, if I had done what I did in the beginning, in the first two sessions, I had got people to actually prepare some questions. So Esther, you and I have not been in touch in the last week. We can both vouch for that. And this is the perfect opening question to a session on UK funding. And thank you for sharing what your organization does, because that often puts it into context. You know, I think it's quite useful to say we are from an organization Saving the Rhino, or we serve social pensions. What it can help me to slightly answer your question, but in your perfect for this group question, I see about 6 points to raise to touch on. Firstly, and very importantly, and I'm not going to start with almost the last point I'm going to touch on is which donors are likely to fund First Nations and Indigenous people. That I'm coming to that. There are a couple of things that need to be in place. Now, why am I comfortable to speak on this topic? Because firstly, I didn't set about to, but just through various circumstances, which I've found that once I'd really learned fundraising, it wasn't part of a grand master plan that I set up. I was in fact asked by Rhodes University once, after doing some other work for them in Grahamstown. I was asked to totally take on, but not from being based in the UK, but to take, because I was absolutely Cape Town based, to take on their UK fundraising for a year, because they had a trust and all kinds of things, and they just weren't bringing in much money. So that, I ended up doing it for 4 years, and that gave me a fast track knowledge that was invaluable. So based on that experience, coming over, I'm talking from UK right now, but coming over here 4 or 5 times a year, very specifically doing what I was doing for Rhodes, it taught me so much. And years later, sort of 10 years on from that, I actually wrote a book. In fact, my most recent book is literally a book about fundraising from the UK. And from being the operative word, or fundraising from UK donors, I think is its exact title. because I wish I'd known the things before I started. So here's some of those basics. And Esther, yeah, your question is perfect. So firstly, and I was a little concerned when you said that you're struggling a bit to get local, as in some South African sport. Now, what I'm telling you, you happen to be, to the best of my knowledge, exclusively in South Africa. We sometimes have people from one of the SADC countries. So I know I'm basically talking to a South African, and maybe some people in our group are SADC. Interestingly, I could be talking to you in Mexico, Guatemala, the Philippines, or anywhere around the world. Fundraising from the UK is not a specifically what UK and South Africa issue. It's how the Brits go about their international giving. So I'm answering that question. So step one, Esther. I'll give you 4 or 5 of their basic, where they're coming from, because that was the hardest thing for me to do, to understand what this whole issue about why is it so different. And I actually wrote the book that I wished I'd read before I embarked on this contract for roads, because I'd done a lot of fundraising in South Africa from the UK, but I had such gaps in my knowledge. So firstly, there are 2 or 3 primary sources of funding. Now, the biggest source, if we're talking just amounts of money, the biggest source are UK donor trusts. That's your biggest source of funding. Your second source are individuals in general. And your third source, I would separate out from just ordinary UK individuals. I would take out either South Africans living in the UK or somebody with a South African connection. I organized 2 nights ago, a huge event in London in partnership, so 2 organizations benefiting. In fact, back with Rhodes University and the Khaleesi Foundation. Rachel Khaleesi came over from France, and it's all about announcing, it was a fundraising event, but it was also about announcing a new partnership with the Khaleesi Foundation and Rhodes, where kids who'd finished school, because Khaleesi Foundation is doing amazing stuff in Zwede, on everything from gender-based violence, nutrition, and ensuring kids get a good schooling, but that's when it stops. And there's rugby coaching, or all sports coaching, of course. And so they're launching a rugby scholarship to Rhodes. So that was the purpose of it all. And this ties into this third grouping I'm talking of. So who are the donors? UK grant-making trusts, all UK citizens, as well as those with some sort of South African connection. They could be expat South Africans living here. I voted the other day at the South African High Commission. I'm sure you guys saw it on TV. I estimated about 10,000 people when I happened to arrive there, and apparently I was not far off. It's a huge South African community, but there are also people that have a South African connection. And what I'm thinking about is with this event the other day, we didn't even try and sell tickets broadly because of the Rhodes connection. They've got their alumni and everything. But I remember somebody attending who happened to be born in South Africa because her father was there, a British woman, but her father was there doing a year's work there or something. But she is, so she's South African born, left as a baby, is absolutely British. She made up a group of 12 people, just got that heart connection. And she's a volunteer for organizations in South Africa on their fundraising. So there's the grant-making trusts. There are Brits in general, and there could be a different group that has the South African kind of heart connection. I would also say if we separate, or if we look at donor trusts around the world, say America, Europe, all kinds of places, and we added up how much money they all give into nonprofits in South Africa, I'd stick my neck out and say UK trusts give more into South Africa than all those other countries put together. There is South Africa, the UK definitely has the largest number of South Africans than any other country in the world. I've always believed that. And interestingly, with the recent election, I had a look at the South Africans who registered to vote, and absolutely, the London voting office was actually open for 3 days. They announced it would be 2 days, Saturday and a Sunday, but they actually already had it open on the Friday. So it's a great place to be fundraising. So those are the upsides. However, speaking firstly about the trusts, the UK donor trusts, Esther, they have a couple of things, and this was solidified for me in the research for this book I did recently. They don't want to fund. It's not, we've learned in our sector to never say never. So largely, UK donor trusts prefer not to fund organizations that are brand new or newish or very young. Ideally, they'd like an organization to have existed for at least 5 years. Now, that can technically be closer to 6 years, because how they define it is 5 full audited financial statements. That's really the issue. So they don't want brand new. I was going to say dollar signs because it's an expression, but pound signs, because it's, I saw yesterday's 23 Rand 73 or something to the pound. I mean, raising money in the UK is a phenomenally good thing to do just because the exchange rate is so bad. It's tragic for South Africa that our currency is so weak, but I say when fundraising, it is about the only place that it's really, really positive. So they want the why, and why do they not want to fund brand new organizations? Because they want and expect the organizations to have kind of been proven by having gained local support and retained that local support. For instance, if you ask a company or a trust or high net worth individual, however you go about your fundraising, and not specifically individuals. Remember, they trust, so that they're wanting to see that you're getting some trust type of foundation, etc., support in South Africa. They want to know that if these donors, that sort of group of donors, are funding you in South Africa and keep funding you, then you're doing something right. Because, for instance, are you properly reporting? Are those donors who currently are funding you happy with your whole theory of change, your whole monitoring and evaluation, all of that sort of thing? So they want you sussed out and almost approved by your local support. That is absolutely vital. Secondly, they also require, now this is something where, again, the UK is different to any other organization in the world. They require, now I'm using terminology that is not mine, I'm using terminology that UK donor trusts use. They want to give via, these are their words, a UK registered charity partner. UK registered charity partner. No other country in the world has that requirement. Yes, there's a slightly different thing in other countries, and that's all around tax rebates. In America, for those of you who fundraise in America, you will know that they want to give through an American-based and registered organization, because the Americans all want their tax rebate called 501c3 in America. It's exactly like our 18A. That does not apply in the UK. That is not what's behind UK trust thinking. What they want to do, and I think it's horribly paternalistic, and I think it has its roots in colonialism, but they want to be able to deal with literally a UK-based and registered charity partner. Their words, they want to be able to hold to account a UK registered organization. They don't want to have the hassle of checking what's going on far away in some other country. So here's how the process works. All of you in your organizations would do all the work. There's nothing that lets you off doing all the fundraising work. So you would still have to do all the work. But there are one of 3 ways you can satisfy this UK registered partner requirement. The most expensive, one option, and when I say most expensive, it's not a fraction of how expensive and complex it is in America, for instance, and sort of like first prize, but there are costs attached, to have your own organization registered in the UK for fundraising purposes. And give you some examples. Well, as I said, I did this the other day for the Rhodes University UK Trust. Think of Nelson Mandela Children's Fund UK. So that type of thing. So there would be, the organization starts in South Africa, or for that matter, anywhere in the world, and has its sister entity registered in the UK to satisfy that requirement of giving via a UK-based registered organization. So the money, although the work is done in South Africa on the fundraising, the money does not get sent from the donor trust directly to South Africa. It is given to the UK entity, and the UK entity holds all the legal responsibility, because they don't want the hassle of having to try and enforce something in another country. So that's what's behind it. So the three options that you could have to satisfy them is, as I said, you could have your own such entity. Minimum trustee requirements are 3 people. But the admin, the government systems work extremely well in the UK, and one has to comply. So there's some cost. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's kind of it's almost an ultimate goal, but it's not the only option. The second option, and this is something all of us did for decades when I started fundraising, was to find, and again I'm quoting them, a UK-based charity partner. And that is still a perfectly fine way to go. But you need to find an organization. I use the word charity because in the UK, nonprofits are called charities. Even the entity that governs them is called the Charities Commission. And the only term for nonprofit in the UK is charity. It jars me a lot because I see developmental work in South Africa. I see charitable work. To me, charitable work is dealing with the poorest of the poor. It could be serving soup to the hungry. You know what I mean? So, but the UK charity, so we use that term. So when I say charity, they say that charity, think non-profit. So one option that still exists is to find yourself a UK-based and registered non-profit, they call it charity, doing as close work that is possible to you. The closer, the better. And I have over the years arranged many such partnerships. I'll give you an example. I got for the NSRI, National Sea Rescue Institute in South Africa, I organized that they become a partner with the Royal, help me, Alan, what's it called? The Royal Lifeboat, you know what I mean, the lifeboat people. Can't remember the exact.
National Lifeboats Institution, RNLI.
Thank you. Doing identical work. That's the point. Childline, there was a separate Childline in the UK doing exactly the same work, but they had absolutely nothing formal with them. So that's, you know, if you choose to seek a partner, your partner has got to be doing as close as is possible work to you. They can't just somehow be a registered charity in the UK. So that is important. But if you do find a partner in the UK, the partner doesn't do the fundraising for you. You do all the work. I cannot stress that enough because that's an area where people sometimes get it wrong. And you would effectively arrange your partnership yourself, and then you would agree, let them understand why they are partners, because the vast majority of UK charities don't actually even know of this concept. The biggest thing they need to be assured of is that donor X is not going to give them less money because they're giving it to you, because donor X will have a British focused budget as well as an international budget. So that is certainly an option. Many of these partnerships, the UK-based organization takes a commission, generally not more than 10%, because they've got to do some kind of admin around it. They will receive the money. They are actually legally responsible. If there's a contract to be signed, the UK entity signs it. They receive the money. They've got to send it to you in South Africa, and there's some things that are required of them. The third option, and when this came about, I jumped 10 foot off the ground, because it was, you know, for many organizations, the cost of setting up their own organization in the UK was a bit prohibitive. And even working through the partner can be problematic. Some cases it's amazing. I know of some partnership situations where they waive the 10% and they just think it's absolutely amazing. But I've seen partnerships that I've set up myself for organizations, and somebody leaves in their job in the UK entity. Now there's a replacement who just doesn't have that heart connection. The whole thing collapses. So it's great if you can make it happen, but it was a second option to having one's own registered organization and having to maintain the compliance with the authorities and all. And then about, gosh, I should know the year, but about 15, 18 years ago, something called the UK Fund for Charities was established. And its sole purpose is to act as that partner. And when I first heard about it, I was so cynical that I contacted the chair of this, the founder chair, and I said to him, what's the catch? This sounds too good to be true. What is the catch? You're charging a nominal fee to join. The model is organizations from around the world can become members, and that takes away the need and the hassle of having a partner. And then the donors give to this entity, and the money, it's effectively a conduit, and conduits are banned. So they found, he said, we had a volunteer lawyer that took 3 years to find a legal way to do this. So I was still a bit cynical. I said, okay. And I couldn't kind of find a catch, but okay. And those days, my business in South Africa was quite big. We were fundraising for 14 different organizations. So I spoke to a couple of them and I said, will you help me to kind of guinea pig this? Join this UK Fund for Charities. It's very inexpensive. I think for 1 or 2, I just simply paid it because I don't want that to be an obstacle. And we'll try the route. And it was mind-blowingly successful. It was just amazing. It opened a flood of UK money to the point where the same man whom I'd rather rudely said, what's the catch? Said to me, you are raising more money through us than anyone else in the world. Because remember, this had nothing to do with South Africa. It's for any country outside. So will you become a trustee? And I thought it was so exciting. It was going so well. So of course I was going to give my volunteer time. And the trouble of becoming a trustee is ultimately you end up chairing. And that's what I do. One of my volunteer involvements is chairing UK Fund for Charities. So I'm saying that. It doesn't, I earn absolutely nothing from it. I believe very much in it. CAF, Charities Aid Foundation, does the same. Now, fascinating, this guy, David, who set this up, had worked for CAF, but found, no, he was a trustee with CAF, actually. He just felt that CAF's such a massive organization, it was just getting too cumbersome. So he said, how can I offer this part? Because CAF does lots of things. How can I offer this part more simply, more cost effectively, etc.? So that's the third option. So you have to have one of those things in place. You need to have your own organization registered in UK. You need to find a partnership that will really work, or you can join CAF for that matter. It'll cost you a bit more, and they'll take they take a small amount, but it's not nothing like the 10% that the partners would take. So that has to be in place. So long answer to Esther's question, you need to have been around a minimum of 5 years or have 5 years audited financials, which means you could have started organically 2 or 3 years before you even registered, etc. And you've got to sort this partnership issue out. That is imperative for getting money from the donor trusts. I will get back to talking about UK individuals and South Africans abroad, but I don't want to waffle too incessantly because this isn't training. Esther, your hand is up. Does that mean you want to ask a second question, or is that just your original hand that's up?
Yes, just a quick second question. This is quite intense and long, and to give everyone else a chance as well, I would like to have your contact email so I could communicate with you in that way, if that's okay.
It should be, it's Jill at papillonpress.biz. I mean, it's however you got to hear about this. Are you on our mailing list? How did you know? You should, I mean, you can have my email with the greatest pleasure. It's Jill at papillonpress.biz. It's really available. I want to continue with Esther's 2 questions to get to individuals, but is there anybody who'd like to come in on anything else? Or are you comfortable? Because I'm not trying to make this a training session. I'm essentially trying to make this not be a training session. Yes, Alan, please jump in.
In the UK, Her Majesty's Revenue Commissioners very kindly repay 25% of every pound is received from a UK registered tax donor.
That's exactly what I'm coming to. Yes, thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm sorry for stealing
No,
your
it's
thunder.
perfect. No, thank you. I'm coming to that. I was going to put it under the individual category, but thanks. Absolutely. That's so, again, it's unique to the UK. So I'm trying to drip feed the info. So on this issue, here's my point really. On this issue of UK donor trusts, because as I said to Esther, I first gave her this issue about, which they're not going to tell you very freely, but don't be brand new and apply because you're going to waste your time. Focus your energy on getting strong local support. Laura, I'll be with you in a second. Then, so I've touched on the donor trusts. Then I'm going to, still in response to Esther's point, I'm going to talk about UK individuals, and then I'm going to focus in on South Africans in the UK. But was it Laura? I lost your hand. Who had their hand up? I've got, yes,
Hi,
Laura,
Jill, your
please go
memory
for
is
it.
great.
Yes.
Hi, can you, apologies if it's a bit noisy in the background. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to recap on, you mentioned Charities Aid Foundation, and I know that there is a branch here in South Africa. So that's gone through recent rebranding. Would the protocol be to engage with them here in South Africa, or are you suggesting that we engage with Charities Aid Trust in the UK? I just want to clarify.
It's online, so it doesn't really matter. Or what you do
Okay.
with CAF is you can be anywhere in the world, and you will join, you will do whatever it takes, pay or whatever it takes. My point, and as I said, I declare that I have given now something like 16 volunteer years to the UK Fund for Charity and do not make one single cent from being part of it. It's simpler, it's smaller, it's simpler, and costs less than CAF. But I'm not saying anything bad about CAF, because what they do is great, but they're large and cumbersome. So the former, in fact, he was chair of CAF America, which grew out of CAF in the UK, set up the UK Fund for Charities because he said, I can see the need to tick the box of the UK-based charity organization that donors give to, but the what's the word? Bureaucracy is enormous. So I wanted to come up with something simpler. So CAF does not do your fundraising. UK Fund for Charities does not do your fundraising. So by all means, because I'm trying to be as fair as, because I'm declaring that I'm a volunteer. In fact, these days I'm the chair of the UK Fund for Charities. But I'm saying, hey, it's not the only option. There's also CAF. But everything's online. You would just go online and Google Charities Aid Foundation if you want to in South Africa. And I'm not, to be honest, I'm not even sure what services they offer in South Africa, because I just see them as this global entity and very trusted. That's the point. CAF is very trusted. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Thanks, Jill.
I want to because Esther's given us lovely sort of starting place. Right. As Alan was saying, exactly what I was coming to. Something that also happens nowhere else in the world is the UK government. We know in South Africa SARS, here it is HMRC, His Majesty's Customs, it's basically the tax authorities. What they do, because they want to encourage individuals to donate to charities, is they give UK taxpayers. So if a UK taxpayer makes a donation to a UK-based charitable organization, the government adds 25%. So if somebody gives £100, the government will give £25 as well. All that is in fact happening is they are taking that money from tax that person has paid with that person's permission. But it's also, it kind of, it gives more money to the charities, but it also gives the donor a feel-good factor. Wow, my £100 actually has now £125. And it all came to encourage individual giving. Now, I was not the chair, I was a trustee of the UK Fund for Charities, working flat out fundraising in South Africa. And I noticed that, you know, I do the fundraising, I'd write a proposal or something to a trust and tell them about the tie-up with the UK fund. And if they're going to, and they would, if they were going to give, they would give the money to the UK fund. So well, that was great. That's how we do the work. then I'd be notified that, say, £10,000 is being donated or whatever. The UK fund makes the transfer once a quarter. So I'd kind of be keeping a little spreadsheet to know that 10,000 is coming from that one, £1,000 coming from that one, or £35,000 coming from that one. There's a very, very nominal charge that the UK fund makes basically for its admin. And I kind of know how much was coming. And for about 6 months, so two times of sending money for 6 or 7 of my client organizations, we were getting substantially more than I was expecting. And it kind of worried me, because the money didn't come to me, of course. It went straight to my charitable organizations that I was working for, South Africa. And I was a little bit worried that there might be some kind of admin error and that the organizations might have to repay it or something, you see. So I contacted this lady called Jenny. She's still running it. She was there from the get-go. She's still the admin person. I said to her, I'm just worried. It would be horrendous with organizations that have got this money and they planning to spend it, or they're spending it, and now suddenly you pick up an admin error. No, she said, it's not to do with the trusts. It doesn't apply to the trusts, but it's money from individuals, and it's the gift aid. I said, the what? Because I'm in South Africa. I don't know what the heck gift aid is, and there wasn't like a song and dance made about it that I could read about in South Africa. So I said, the what? She said, Google it. That, Alan, is how I learned about gift aid. That every quarter the money was coming through for my clients, and despite the little nominal amount that the UK fund takes off for their admin costs to tick all the right boxes, there was always more money, and it was the individuals extra 25% that was accounting with this more money. So it is wonderful. So what I was trying to say, under UK individuals, any UK taxpayer, they could be working anywhere in the world for a UK company. They could quite frankly be working in South Africa, but they're UK taxpayers. If they make a donation, and if they give permission, because why is this permission thing important? The government is giving away money. They're dipping into let's say Mrs. Smith's tax that Mrs. Smith has paid. And if Mrs. Smith is super generous and adds gift aid, just gives her permission, as it's called, for gift aid to be added. And if she's so generous that she runs out of tax she's paid in that year, then Mrs. Smith herself is going to have to pay back the tax authorities. So you have to have permission, but it's very rare that it's withheld. I must say, I'd say about 90, I'd love to know Alan's experience, but about 95% of the cases, I find people, as long as they're reminded, and funnily enough, gift aid has become a verb here. Will you gift aid the donation? Or if it is gift aided, and it's more, and it's very few who don't do it, very, very few. So it's wonderful. So that's any UK taxpayer. So that's another important thing to bear in mind. And then thirdly, there is this group of South Africans or people with a South African connection. They could have done a gap year in South Africa. They could have sort of they might have spent some time working in South Africa, been to a South African university, simply loving going on holiday to South Africa. They could have family connections. So, you know, whatever it is, you know, that people speak of all these South Africans, and yes, it was proven the election with the vast numbers who registered and who voted in the UK. One thing that I do find organizations, non-profits in South Africa make one slight error. And even if it's 10, or there is 24,500 South Africans registered to vote. Fact, 24,500 South Africans registered to vote now. That does not mean that that's every single South African in the UK. But it is known that there are, you know, different people have different, some talk about 500,000, some talk about 750,000. I heard somebody the other day feel quite comfortable that there are about 1 million South Africans. But whatever that number is, it doesn't automatically follow that because the person is a South African in the UK, or for that matter, anywhere else in the world, but our focus today is UK, that they're going to automatically say, oh, shame, and fund an organization back in South Africa. That's something we kind of need to bear in mind, because on top of everything else, I happen to have founded something called the SA UK Trust Network. And it is literally what it says. Think of the Chamber of Commerce is for business. This is a network in the UK of the people. Remember I said you could have your own trust in the UK? So I've taken those trusts and formed them into a network, just a network. They get together, they complain, they learn, they share. Alan's organization happens to be a member. And I find people newly joined come all excitedly, and they say, oh wow, they're going to, the organization in South Africa's funding problems are going to be, there's no more funding. They're going, the South Africans in the UK, it starts with if. So if 5,000 South Africans in the UK commit to a £20 a month debit order, that's it. That's all our running costs covered for the year. The point is, it isn't quite as simple as that. The South Africans in the UK, if you think about the fact we have 300,000 registered NPOs, and those are just organizations in South Africa that have NPO certificates. That doesn't include schools, faith-based entities, tertiary institutions, clubs, etc., etc. So there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of organizations in South Africa trying to fundraise in the UK. It doesn't automatically follow just because someone's from the UK and they get asked, because other hundreds and hundreds, or I'd put it into thousands, asking them for money. Sadly, a lot of South Africans have left the UK, South Africans have emigrated, often for very negative reasons, crime in particular. I met a guy the other day, his mother was murdered, the whole family have emigrated. So it just isn't an automatic, they're South African, so they're going to support. Why did I mention this event I did the other night? That place was filled just with Rhodes alumni and UK rugby lovers. We even had the legend Tommy Bedford come on the night. It was amazing. So sometimes that works, but it isn't that simplistic. So, those are just one of the things to bear in mind. And then critically, very, very critically, and this is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in South Africa. If you have, as I'd like to believe every single one of your organizations have, a website, because you can't not have a website. Fundraising does not work without a website. You can be on every possible social media channel you like. You have to have a website. But very importantly, if you have simply, on the website, donate, and you're very active on your social media and you're reaching people you don't even know and all that sort of thing. If you have a situation where UK citizens, or let's put it the UK taxpayers, who could be anywhere in the world, but UK taxpayers, if they donate directly to South Africa, you will not get the gift aid. You will not get the extra 25%. That is imperative to understand. So you organizations who, let's use an example of the UK Fund for Charities. There could be an organization in South Africa that has no partnership with a charity in the UK. It does not have its own established registered fundraising entity in the UK, but it's done something simple. It's paid £100 and it's joined the UK Fund for Charities. In order to offer gift aid to British taxpayers, please be very careful. So you'll have your standard, whatever you've got to donate, click here or whatever. But so you might have social media that's saying we did this amazing thing. And as you know, social media is not all about give, give, give. It's about 80% saying, wow, look at this amazing work. And only about 20% of the time, a gentle ask, sort of implying, well, we can't do this amazing work without funding. So to support us, click here. That's a key, but that's a whole separate topic. What you don't want to have happen, and let's presume you only have your one standard South African website. Let's go back to our generous Mrs. Smith, who lives in South Africa, who lives in the UK, and whether she's South African or just has a heart connection. If she simply donates directly into your South African account, you do not get the gift aid. So what you have to ensure you do if you have, for instance, joined up with CAF, or I can only speak in detail about the UK Fund for Charities, you need to, you know, please to donate, give here, then you need to have something really big pop up, even if this is aimed at people globally. And you might have a different option for in the UK, in America, and you might have a different option in Australia, whatever, but I'm talking UK only. Have something quite big and in your face, as it were, that Mrs. Smith, who wants to fund you, is told, if you are a UK taxpayer and would like your donation gift aided, then you click on a different link. And Mrs. Smith technically is funding for you into the UK Fund for Charities, and the UK Fund for Charities will ensure you get the extra 25%. So I'm not wanting to make that complicated, but these are the kind of things where people struggle because the UK is so different to anywhere else. Esther, I hope I've helped to answer you, and I know it's got quite complicated, but that's the kind of UK issue in a nutshell. Anybody, what I'm interested in is obviously any other questions, but any obstacles any of you had in your UK fundraising, how you've overcome them, anything you'd like to share with the group, or any specific other UK related questions. Anybody? While you're thinking, I did touch on a moment ago and made this very definitive statement. There's every single, Kim, I'll be with you in a second. Every single organization must have a website. In order to successfully fundraise, you must have a website. That's an absolutely non-negotiable. And just one of my, it's your window onto the world. Just one of the reasons that this is so important, and this is under the topic of UK, this fundraising, in this case, UK donors, is the UK trust donors insist that your policies, you need to have policies on all manner of things, anything from safeguarding to money laundering to, you know, all those usual policies, but some will be quite specific to your organization. They must be on your website. So just not having a website, so because you don't have a place to put your policies, will instantly rule you out of trust funding. Kim, I haven't forgotten about you. Ellen, are you something that we're talking about, or do you want to, or you go after Kim? How do you want to, how would you like to?
I was going to take up what you had said about the South Africa UK Trust Network and endorse everything you've said. Any South African charity in the UK which is not a member isn't a serious fundraiser in the UK. It's an amazing organization. I don't miss a meeting, as you know. I've met some wonderful people. I've learned so much. So if your charity works in the UK and you're not a member of the South African UK Trust Network, join today. It's essential.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, Alan can vouch for the fact that we sometimes have donors there, but not. I often have donors speaking because I organize the programs, and I like things to come across from a donor's perspective. I've had people representing companies because they're not really good sources of funding in the UK. I've had people representing trusts, etc. And I'm not sure if you were there a few years ago, Alan, when we had a billionaire, high net worth individual, philanthropist. And I said, now, from your perspective, I'm looking for different types of donors. And at the end of the talk, he said, Jill's got my email, happy to receive applications from anybody in the room of 60 different organizations. And he told me afterwards, because then my email blew up and everybody asked for his email. And he told me afterwards that he funded every single organization on that day. Kim, you've been waiting so patiently. Please jump in.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I am with the Tembelicha Foundation, but I am based in the UK in Wales. So I work for their UK sister company, I guess you could say. So I wanted to ask a question relative to grant applications for in the UK. I wanted to find out, so we are registered with the Charities Commission here, and in South Africa, we are quite well established, but in the UK, our income is significantly less. So we are, when we're applying for the grants, I'm trying to find out relative to annual income criteria in terms of eligibility, would I then include UK income only, because that is what they can sort of view from the Charities Commission, or do I have to include South African income as well?
Okay, it's a brilliant question. I'll expand on it for everyone else. The short answer is only your UK income. That's the short answer. But just let me get a little bit more clarity, Kim. So if I understand, and please forgive me, I'm going to ask you a question that's yes or no, and forgive me if I don't know, because we've got like 200 members. Are you in the UK a member of the SA UK Trust Network?
No.
Oh, well, we need to rope you in. Alan's my PR department. That's a whole separate issue. There was something I wanted to add to what Alan was saying. So what Kim is asking is, and I'll just put it, I'll just rephrase it, and please jump in if I've got it wrong. So Thembelihle exists in South Africa. You have registered a charity in the UK, and you are the person on the ground in the UK. Okay, as is in the case of Massicorp, Alan is that person in the UK. Now, I'm just jumping in for everybody's clarity. I said earlier that all the fundraising work is done in South Africa. The qualifier to that is if you don't have somebody in the UK doing the actual fundraising work. Most people still do that, get all the fundraising work. And by that, I mean writing proposals and, simply because it's cheaper to employ people in South Africa than it is in South Africa. Sorry, in South Africa than it is in the UK. It's generally this basic reason. They'll set up the legal structure, even a fully registered organization. I have a very good friend. She was one of the startup fellow trustees with me of the SA UK Trust Network. We started it in 2010. And she's been involved from the day one, and she's been involved in the South African organization that she represents over here for about 25 years. Entirely voluntary, but she doesn't do any of the actual fundraising. She organizes events in the UK, but she doesn't, for instance, prepare a proposal or an application form to a UK trust. It's done by the office fundraising team in South Africa. So when I was saying you do all the work, all I was really trying to say is if you join CAF or the UK Fund for Charities, and even in some cases, if you have a fully registered organization, your own in the UK, or for that matter, a partner, in about 80% of the cases, the manual labor, the time-consuming hard work still happens in South Africa. But it can, I just like that there are different examples here. Okay, so to answer Kim's very specific question, yes, the UK Potential Donor Trust is dealing exclusively with your UK entity. They do understand that the UK entity exists as the fundraising arm of, in your case, Thembelihle in South Africa, in Alan's case, Massicorp in South Africa. But if they're looking for audited financials, it is the UK's only. Whereas because you're not delivering the services in the UK, but you're the fundraising arm, and more importantly in their eyes, you're taking legal and all other responsibility. I'll give you an example that I did a number of years ago. I handled the fundraising for St. John Ambulance in South Africa for about 15 years. And St. John, it originated in the UK, and it has branches that's active in probably virtually every former British colony in the world, still going strong. And I found a call, first time ever, that the lottery, which has millions in the UK, was offering money overseas. They called it like an international, they had an international budget. They launched this international call for funding. And I looked at this and I thought, wow, I feel this could, and I'm South Africa. I'm South African head of fundraising for South Africa, St. John. I thought, I think South Africa might just, St. John, South Africa might just be a fit for this particular call. So the very first thing I did was ask the St. John head office, in the UK, will you act as our partner in this? And they said, yes, absolutely. In fact, to make it better, we do fundraise ourselves from the UK lottery, so they kind of know us as well. So I had to do all the work. And when I say all the work, I'm talking about a 60-page application form, a 50-page business plan, a minimum 40-page M&E plan. I mean, it was insanely huge. And it was funded, got effectively £1 million, 100,000 a year for 5 years, and then they renewed it. So, and in that case, Kim, and I'm just using that example because that donor completely got it. The St. John UK was scrutinized. Although it was absolutely clear the money was being raised by St. John UK, and the policy with the lottery is 10% is put on top. So in fact, they gave, first year was £500,000, they gave £550,000 for that extra £10,000 a year, was so that UK St. John had whatever it needed to check up, because they were taking legal responsibility. And once a year, they sent somebody from St. John to the UK to go and check up. So I hope that helps you. So they know the services are carried out in what they call the home country, but they assess and hold accountable the UK registered office, if that helps. Great
thank you
question.
so much.
And we will. Oh, I would like to add one little thing that I was saying about the SA UK Trust Network. It is not restricted only to organizations such as, I'm using Kim and Alan as an example. Alan is Masicorp. They have a registered entity in the UK. Kim has Temblisha. They are registered in the UK. They don't have to be registered. It's perfectly acceptable that an organization in South Africa would join the UK Fund for Charities and have a person in the UK, generally a volunteer, and they can join. That's absolutely fine. That we don't get in their way and say you have to have a UK registered entity, but we do say you've got to have an acceptable method of fundraising in the UK. And so I'd say about 70% of those in our network work through CAF, or mostly they're the UK Fund for Charities. So that it's not exclusively that one has to have that that own entity. A couple of cases they go the partnership route, and what I find lovely is the person in the UK representing the organization, as well as someone from the partnership, often come to these events together. So we try not to exclude anybody. So I just kind of wanted to add that. Any more specific UK fundraising questions? While you're thinking, I just wanted to just mention something about events earlier. Fundraising events, which you all know what they are very, I was going to say popular, I was going to say mainstream. Fundraising events are so accepted, so normal, well attended, well supported in the UK. So in many cases, the UK person, be it an employee working from an office, on the one extreme. I mean, for instance, Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in the UK has 2 staff members. So it doesn't matter how the size of the operation, as it were. Or it could just be a volunteer, like this friend of mine that I was thinking about. And all she does is organizes 2 or 3 fundraising events in the UK. So I want to say to you that if you have something in place, a partnership, and you don't even have to get to the level of having your own organization. I mean, yes, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying that's not where you need to start. If you have somebody, even if they are just a volunteer for your organization, don't underestimate or don't compare fundraising events in South Africa with fundraising events in the UK. Fundraising events in the UK are easier because the Brits are so conditioned to events. They're well attended. I mean, as I said, I did this thing the other night for the Khaleesi Foundation and Rhodes together. And I would say about 20 to 30% extra money was raised by simply inviting people to buy tickets and they didn't want to come or couldn't come or whatever, and they just make donations. That's a very normal thing. A donation in lieu of, so I can't make it, but I think what you do is great, here's a donation. It's very standard. The UK is a very busy place with things happening. They don't have the obstacle of crime. Oh, I don't go to events because there's crime. I don't want to drive home alone at night or whatever. No, that isn't a problem in the UK. So the one important thing is to let people know, let them hold the date early, because there's so much going on. And it's a tragedy when you come up with an event and you only let people know, 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and they go, I would have been there if I'd known earlier. So if somebody in the UK can plan events for you, no matter how small and simple or large, it doesn't matter, plan early. That's event organizing 101, you all know that, but get that hold the date out early, please. Don't negate that. It doesn't all have to be, my point is, it doesn't all have to be about writing applications to the trusts. It doesn't all have to be about sending email asks to individuals who happen to be on your mailing list, or incessantly putting stuff out on your social media about please support us. Events have a very, very valuable place. I love them. They're a lot of work, insane amount of work, but the benefits, the added benefits, it's way more than the money you make on the night. And many cases, I know Alan invited me recently to one that he did here, and that was not even charged. You didn't, the one you did at the House of Lords, Alan, you didn't even sell tickets. Your objective there was to have, you had a person who'd volunteered talking from her first-hand experience, and you had existing donors. You just had people in the room, showed them phenomenal short videos, and said, we can't do what we do without money. I mean, there's lots of ways of going about it. Komani?
Thank you again. So just a quick question from my side. So according to your research, your experience, do organizations that I will term them not carry a well-known name like Nelson Mandela, Siyakolis, do they also do as well? If not, what is their pathway towards success, especially when you talk about fundraising events and just building a solid and trustable reputation in the UK?
That's such a brilliant question. And in fact, I think it could have been Esther's question. I think, Esther, I didn't answer maybe I didn't answer you all of what you're saying, but it occurred to me when you were talking. It's not just the well-known brands, because I have to tell you, and Alan knows them as well, the two ladies who work for Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. The second there's something in the media about suspected fraud or something, and the Mandela Fund has had problems, it can negatively affect their fundraising as well. And they're not getting the kind of money they used to get in when Madiba was literally able to come to London and go to events. So, but my point is that it's getting, I mean, it's 101 for all fundraising, for all organizations anywhere in the world. You know this. It is such an important thing to do, is to get your organization known. I mean, that's imperative. But people give because they care about causes. So, in South Africa, let's start there, which you know very well. The corporates have what they call their grant-making criteria, and they change. I mean, CSI, in my office in Cape Town, we manage donor research for our donor directories. And the corporates, it's a nightmare. We've got this research team. They're not all sitting in one office. Merle, who's on the call, is part of our research team. We have lots of people helping with the research. It never ends. For two reasons. Job hopping. I can't believe if I had such a lovely job as working in a CSI office and all I have to do is assess applications from nonprofits and give them money. I think that's a dream job. But no, they'll go somewhere else for an extra R1,000 a month. So the staff leaving, and then at board level, the changing of the grant-making criteria happens all the time. So just because company X has funded early childhood development for 30 years, in the 31st year, they might go, no, now we're saving the rhino. So it's an incessant level of researching. But so I'm just saying, you guys understand what I mean by donor research. So be it a trust in the UK, which is much more stable in what they give, which exactly like trusts in South Africa, what foundations or trusts fund is generally written into their founding documents. It can actually be very hard for a trust if the founders, the people who endowed the trust, who gave the money, say this money must be for university scholarships in law. And the trustees feel actually they want to give into one of the sciences, or quite frankly, they want to give to early childhood development. It's it takes it's legal intervention. You literally have to, in South Africa, you have to get permission from the master of trust. I'm not exactly sure how you change it in the UK, but it's complicated. So trusts and what they give are more stable. But whether it's an individual or whether it's a trust, and in South Africa, as I said, the companies change all the time. But one of the important things that underpins giving is, now I'm using it in a different sense, is trust in an organization. Trust in an organization is imperative. Those of you who know about Izinga Assist, an organization that is in formation, starting to happen. I happen to be a trustee of this incredible development, is happening exclusively because individuals in particular, often some trusts, but particularly individuals in the UK are so concerned because when they check the media, all they see South Africa corruption, South Africa corruption. So this is an organization that's being set in place to carry out unprecedented levels of verification on South African organizations, just to say to donors, these ones are cool. They are they're fine. They're not corrupt. So but very importantly, Khumani, sorry about my long answer, is that people give to the things they care about. So it could be a foundation or trust that cares about, say, environmental issues, and it's hard to even get them out of that, as I said, because it's often legally bound. But individuals, every one of us on this call, we are individuals. We care about different things. I use the analogy about, or these days, COVID has made most of us tap with a credit card. But think if you go to a shop and you have some change and you don't want it rattling around in your pocket, or it makes it literally too much change can make your bag heavy if your purse gets too full of change. What do we do there? There could be collection tins on a shop counter, and maybe there are 2 or 3. There could be one from the local SPCA-like type of animal shelter. There could be one from a homeless shelter that cares about people who literally are homeless and need feeding, a place they can shower, a bed for the night or whatever. So there's animals, there are people in distress, and there could be an early childhood development center. In general, and there have been lots of studies done on this, literally people watching or cameras on, you can't actually see. It's under 10% that will share their money between the 3 tins. I mean, I know when I'm taking my little grandson shopping with me, his greatest joy is that I hand him the change and he feeds it into the tins, and he's obsessed. Everybody must get some. If it's me alone, I'll choose one cause and they'll get all my change. That's what the vast majority of people do. Now, that is exactly the same as when ordinary people see asks. It doesn't have to be a well-known brand by any means. It's what is the cause? People, and let me expand that to say any donor, no matter who they are, anywhere in the world, fund one simple thing, and that is change. There's a problem or a crisis. An organization has, through its projects, a solution through the activities they carry out to change. The jargon within the sector, because we can't resist jargon, is impact. So it depends on the field that you work in. The sort of question I generally get is, yeah, we are working in, we care for social pensioners. And that's not a very sexy cause. My friend works in a different sector, say university education or something. Oh, check, they get so much money. Look at the Trialogue's annual research. You'll see how much goes to education and then job creation, and Trialogue analyze just corporate money. So more of the question I generally get is, hey, man, I'm not working in a very sexy sector to people, but people fund what they want to fund. So that is really where where I think we need to all focus. So if it is the trust, you do your good research. Alan can tell you just part of joining the SA UK Trust Network. It's £50 a year to belong. And the first thing you get when you join or when you renew is the latest list tailor-made of UK trusts that fund into South Africa. And so we obviously we'd have to do our research around what particular trust donors fund. But when you're looking at aiming at individuals, you will look at what individuals care about. Like I said, because this was Rhodes University teaming up with the Khaleesi Foundation. Sia didn't come over from Paris, but Rachel was there. So how did we fill the room? We told the Rhodes alumni, and then got some marketing done amongst British rugby lovers, and we were sold out. So, you know, because it's a partnership between Khaleesi and Rhodes for a rugby scholarship. So, you know, that's the kind of thing you need to do. If you are saving, may not be working whatever he considers the sexiest field, you might be very seriously doing environmental work where you're taking alien vegetation out of rivers or dams, you are removing alien plants, whatever it might be. You will do especially with the incredible value that social media brings us now, you'll find places, groups to join, etc., who care about that. So that's a long answer. Alan, please come in.
Thank you, Jill. May I say to all of the South African charities who are listening that if they are interested in coming to the UK, and if they're involved in education or sport, if they drop me an email at alan@mazicorp.org, I'll be happy to have a chat to them with regarding how we might look at progressing their possible opening up in the UK.
That's so kind of you, Alan. So very kind of you.
There's nothing for nothing. So what I'm going to mention as well is that in October, the Royal Parks Half Marathon, which is in London through the 4 Royal Parks, is a wonderful opportunity for 16,000 people to run and raise funds for whatever charity they select. Mazicorp have a number of places available at www.mazicorp.org. You can check in and sign up and join the Sunday half marathon in London. If your charity has a number of runners, we'd be happy to talk to you about the possibility maybe of sharing whatever you raise through that. The race is currently sold out, but we have a few places which we are able to fill. So we'd be happy to discuss some sort of revenue sharing.
That's lovely, Alan. Actually, at the last event you held, Alan, that I attended, I met a young man who just randomly had no connection with the organization, but he learned online or something and he likes to run, and he was a runner, and of course the runners also get sponsored by their friends and so on. He was so committed after that experience that he was at your event. He's now committed. And he's a South African living over here. No, it's fantastic. The other thing I just wanted to add was one of the things that was never my intention. I was actually asked by Dr. Zola Square, who was the South African High Commissioner in 2010, to his exact words to me was, please, can you take them off my hands? What was happening was the South African registered organizations, well, anybody in the UK trying to fundraise for their South African organization would go to the South African High Commission to look for money. He said to me one day, and because he was the most incredible social development minister South Africa's ever seen, he said to me virtually with tears, he said, I have tears in my eyes if you look closely. He said to me, these people come here, they're either based here or they come over trying to fundraise in the UK. They make an appointment. I try to have an open door, try to see as many people who want to see me, and what they want is money. He said, I'm a diplomat. I work for DIRCO, Foreign Affairs, whatever it's called this week. I don't have a budget. I can't do anything. He says, but I'm a civil servant, so I make a list. So he says, I have this list. And it breaks my heart to say no to them. So please, he said, you are constantly back and forth between the two. You understand the South African sector, blah, blah, blah. Please, would you form a network? He says, my thinking is you could kind of model it on the Chamber of Commerce. So with his 16 on his list, we now have over 200, and he sadly has died. And my commitment to do this voluntarily, as I've done from 2010, is actually honoring Dr. Zola's career. So my point is, when we started this, it was literally just a network, and to have them all stop asking him for money because he has no budget. As he said to me with a twinkle in his eye, he said, I tell them if they get arrested, I'll come and visit them in prison and try everything to do to get them out. But I can't give their charity money. But what has, for me personally, with whichever organizations I'm working with, what has been fantastic for me from this network is joint fundraising events. I've probably, in collaboration with people I've met at these gatherings of our network, I've probably organized since 2010 about 15, if not 20 joint events. So it doesn't always have to be about me. I once organized with 2 other organizations a big dinner, and we had 1,000 people. And so we had 3 groups coming together with their networks, their volunteers, etc. And that can be so powerful. So lots of good things. Mandy, please come in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mandy from the Environmental Monitoring Group. I don't know if I'm being doof.
No, there's no such thing.
I just want to check. So the SA UK Trust Initiative is a registered charity in the UK.
Yes, but that's coincidental. We were just an informal group for about 5 years. The fact we register charity is irrelevant. We do not act as a conduit. We are a network and nothing else.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
But the UK Fund for Charities, to completely confuse everything that I happen to share that is not South Africa focused, is that, as it were, conduit, although we're not supposed to use that word.
Okay, so basically, if we want to, because there's no way we got the money to set up our own organization or the capacity or anything. So if we wanted to work through a UK organization, we should get in touch with CAF, right?
If you want to go to CAF, absolutely, or you can spend less and have just a simpler, easier, less bureaucratic experience. You can join the UK Fund for Charities. It's the same thing.
Okay.
It gives you, it ticks the box that trust donors want, and it also, luckily, later, more since gift aid was introduced, it gives individual UK taxpayers donations. You become worth 25% more.
Marvelous.
If you have a volunteer paid, it doesn't matter. If you have a person based in the UK that is kind of helping you, whatever level, then they could also become part of our network. So I know when I mention the UK Fund and I mention the SA UK Trust, I know people get confused, and I'm sorry about that, but they're just such great opportunities. I don't want to not mention them.
Thank you.
Anybody, any last questions or anything you want to share? Because we are virtually out of time. Anything from anyone? As I said in the beginning, in case you weren't all in this session, unlike those of you who have attended the conferences we organize or training, as this is entirely free, you're not going to be sent the recording. The recording will find its way onto our website, as are all the recordings of these sessions. They happen once a month. So find them on, but give it about a week. You never quite know. Sometimes Zoom takes about 3 days before we get it. My wonderful Yolandi right now is a few days off to, she's in the final year of a course that she's doing through UNISA. So I always say give us about a week. Sometimes it happens within 2 hours, but I just cover ourselves like that. And then just FYI, the next such chat like this, it's always a specific topic, is going to be on the 18th of July. I know it's Mandela Day, but because of Madiba's just love for our sector, we're going to be talking about volunteerism and maximizing the use of volunteers, because I think it's something that a lot of people get wrong. Volunteers are like gold on so many levels. And we just want to chat on this whole topic of volunteers. But again, it'll be booking on Quicket. So yeah, it'd be great if you can join us then, and please be ready to share experiences and ask questions, because that's what it's about. It is not training. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your input, and I hope that some of you have taken some gems away. And Esther, thank you. I loved your question because it was just right, and it's the sort of thing I would have asked people to ask if I had rigged it, but I didn't rig this. And Alan, thank you for your input. Deeply appreciated. And did you all note Alan's offer? If you have someone over here, or you're coming over here and you want to pick his brain, he's so welcome to share. So yes, and good luck, guys. Having spent my entire adult career, my life working in our sector and volunteering in our sector, I have the greatest love for what we all do. We save lives, we change lives, and we save lives. So thank you to all of you. Bye-bye.